I think there's something wrong, I told the obstetrician when I called his exchange over the weekend. I just saw you this week. I think you must be mistaken. I'm not canceling my weekend to come into the office, he replied without concern. If you're that worried, call the office on Monday for an appointment and we'll take a look. That's how my Friday started. I was 30 years old and pregnant with my first and what I later realized, only child. We knew she was a girl and healthy, but the events of that day had me worried. I had a deep fear that this would be my only pregnancy and I wanted to experience every stage of it. That desire was slipping away. The weekend dragged out with dread becoming more and more overwhelming. Just one more week. Please, just stay in there one more week. It's too soon. I whispered to the little life growing inside me. Monday morning finally arrived, and I was frantic. I had not slept since Saturday night, waiting for the moment the doctor's office would open. When I called, the nurse told me to go to the hospital right away. When I got there, I had lost all my amniotic fluid. And to make things worse, the doctors couldn't see any blood flow to her left leg. She had been landlocked longer than what they would like to see, and amputation was a real possibility. The cesarean section needed to begin immediately. I called her father and my parents to let them know what was happening. Her father forgot to even hang up the phone, and my parents frantically tried to figure out a way from St. Louis to Denver in 20 minutes. I was wheeled down the hallway and into the delivery room. I was strapped down to the bed, and a sheet was placed between my head and my belly. A few minutes later, I heard a cry. Then I waited until a little swaddled baby was brought around the sheet. In front of me was this beautiful heart-shaped face. Hello, angel face. Angel face? Where did that come from? It fit. As I was laying in the recovery room, a very young, very nervous nurse came in. There was a little hiccup. We were trying to revive her left leg when I was told to give the vitamin K shot in her right leg, and I felt a shift. It appears in our haste to get your daughter out, we may have broken her right leg, her femur. Oh, but her left leg is fine. I felt like the world was spinning. I was then told I couldn't see Bethany until the drug wore off and I could stand up. So, 40 minutes later, I was standing. Wobbling, but standing. The nurses were falling all over themselves trying to keep me in bed. I finally won the battle and was able to go to the natal intensive care unit. Bethany was 5.5 weeks early, but at 5 pounds, 12.5 ounces, she seemed ready to go home despite the broken leg. Bethany was too young for a cast, so she was fitted with this full body contraption that restricted all the movement except for her arms, which moved in double time. I was so excited. It was Thursday, and I was packing my things, getting ready for Bethany's trip home. The staff had informed me that I would get a call before noon to go down to the NIC unit to meet the doctor and get instructions. Noon went by, then 1, and no phone call. Finally, I decided to walk down there. As I walked into the unit, I was confronted by over a dozen doctors. They were in 3 groups, and they all addressed me at once. I asked them, "What is going on?" And the head of pediatrics said, "Bethany has experienced a bradycardia event." I looked puzzled. That's when a child's frontal lobe is not fully developed and it forgets to breathe. It was then explained to me that Bethany's brain forgets to breathe and consequentially, her heart stops. She would then need to be revived. 5 consecutive days would need to pass after an event before she could come home. I looked this doctor in the eyes, And I asked, what would have happened to her if your staff had not broken her leg, causing her to stay in the hospital an extra 2 days? He hung his head and muttered, she would have been a crib death. Numb, I went through the motions of learning how to care for her broken leg, and it was feeding time. So I took my perfect little angel face into my arms and began to nurse her. A couple of minutes into the feeding, an alarm went off. Her monitor flatlined. This little face that was securely latched on me slowly released. Her body went limp in my arms, her arms fading backwards. I screamed out in sheer panic, and a nurse ran over to me. With 2 fingers, she rubs Bethany's tiny chest until she gasped for breath, her arms retracting, her eyes finally opening. I was terrified. I handed Bethany to the nurse and bolted out the door and burst into tears. That's when I realized God must really want me to have this baby. He broke her leg to save her life. Finally, after nearly 5 weeks in the NICU, I was able to bring my baby girl home, knowing that she would need another x-ray in 2 months to determine the extent of the long-term repercussions of her broken leg. She slept through the night the first day home. Of course, I didn't sleep. I held on to that monitor, listening to her breathe. The day came for that follow-up x-ray. I sat in the x-ray room covered with lead and holding a tiny shield over my little angel face. Which leg was it again? The technician asked. The right, I replied, quite annoyed. There appears to be no sign of a break. That's why I had to double check. Are you sure it was the right leg? I was stunned. Not only had God broken her leg to save her life, but he healed it completely. There was no scar tissue. Both legs were exactly the same length, and no growth plates suffered any damage. Bethany is now 11. She is beautiful, talented, athletic, and smart. But above all else, she'll always be my angel face.